The rain fell in sheets against the windows of the small apartment, each drop racing the others down the glass like tears that refused to stop. Elara Winters stood in the bathroom, her hands trembling as she stared at the white plastic stick resting on the edge of the sink. 2 pink lines. Unmistakable. Impossible. She had taken 3 tests now, each one confirming what her body had been trying to tell her for weeks. The exhaustion that no amount of sleep could cure. The nausea that came in waves, particularly in the mornings. The strange heightening of her senses, as if the world had suddenly turned up its volume. But this shouldn't be possible. Couldn't be possible. Elara pressed her palm against her still flat stomach, her mind reeling. She was pregnant. Pregnant with the child of someone who, by all biological logic, shouldn't be able to create life. Someone who had died over 2 centuries ago, whose heart beat only when he willed it to, whose body existed in a state of perpetual preservation. Pregnant with the child of a vampire. Lysander Blackwood had entered her life like a storm. Sudden, overwhelming, and utterly transformative. They had met at the museum where she worked as a night curator, drawn together by their shared love of history and art. He had seemed mysterious then, with his old-fashioned manners, his encyclopedic knowledge of centuries-old paintings, and the way he always wore gloves, even indoors. It had taken 3 months before he revealed the truth. 3 months of late-night conversations, of walks through rain-soaked streets, of a connection so profound it seemed to transcend the physical world. When he finally told her what he was, Elara had been terrified. But she had also been inexplicably, undeniably in love. That had been a year ago. A year of navigating a relationship that existed in the shadows, literally and figuratively. A year of learning to live on a nocturnal schedule, of understanding the hunger that sometimes flashed in his eyes, of accepting that the man she loved would never age while she would eventually wither and die. They had discussed the future, or the lack thereof. Lysander had been clear about the limitations of their relationship. He could offer her companionship, protection, love even, but not a normal life. Not children. Not a family. Vampires couldn't reproduce. The transformation that granted immortality stole fertility in return. It was a law of their nature, as immutable as their need for blood. Except apparently, it wasn't. Elara heard the lock turn in the front door. Despite her turmoil, she couldn't help but smile. Lysander never simply appeared anymore, not since she'd scolded him for using his supernatural speed and strength to bypass normal human courtesies. He knocked. He used keys. He tried, in his own way, to be as human as possible for her sake. Elara. His voice carried from the living room, smooth and rich like aged whiskey. Even now, after all this time, the sound of it sent shivers down her spine. Are you home? She took a deep breath, gathering the test results, all 3 of them, and stepped out of the bathroom. Lysander stood by the window, his tall frame silhouetted against the city lights beyond. He had removed his black coat and draped it over the back of her reading chair. His dark hair, which he kept slightly longer than was fashionable, curled at the nape of his neck. When he turned to face her, his eyes, those impossible eyes that shifted between deep gray and silver depending on his mood, immediately found hers. In a fraction of a second, he crossed the room, moving with the preternatural speed he usually suppressed around her. His cool hands cupped her face, searching her features with an intensity that would have been frightening if she didn't know him so well. "What's wrong?" he demanded. "Your heartbeat is erratic. You're pale, even for you. Are you ill? Did something happen?" Elara couldn't speak. Instead, she held up the pregnancy tests, watching as his eyes tracked to the plastic sticks in her hand. For a moment, perhaps the first time since she'd known him, Lysander looked completely, utterly lost. "That's not possible," he whispered, his hands dropping from her face. "Elara, that's not possible." "I know," she replied, her voice barely audible. "I thought the same thing. But I've taken 3 tests. All positive. And Lysander, I've been feeling different. For weeks now." He took the tests from her hands, examining them as if they were ancient artifacts that might reveal their secrets under scrutiny. His face had gone completely still, that peculiar frozen quality that vampires adopted when they were processing something that challenged their understanding of reality. "When?" he asked finally. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe 6 weeks. 7. That would have been. He stopped, his jaw tightening. The night of the blood moon. The ritual. Elara nodded. She remembered that night vividly. Lysander had been different, more alive somehow, more present in his body than usual. He had explained that blood moons held special significance for his kind, temporarily strengthening their connection to life itself. They had made love that night with an intensity that had left them both shaken, and for just a moment, she had felt his heart beating in his chest, strong and steady, like he was human again. This shouldn't be possible, Lysander repeated, but his voice had changed. The shock was giving way to something else. Fear. Elara, in over 200 years, I have never heard of this happening. Vampires cannot create life. It's part of the curse, part of what we are. Apparently we can, Elara said, placing her hand over her stomach again. Or you can. With me. Lysander began to pace, his movements restless and agitated. Despite his usual grace, he looked almost predatory now, a caged animal confronting something beyond its understanding. We need to see someone, he said abruptly. Someone who understands these matters better than I do. A doctor? No. His response was sharp, almost harsh. No human doctor could possibly understand this situation. We need to see Morgana. Elara felt her stomach drop. Morgana Nightshade was an ancient vampire, one of Lysander's kind who had lived for over 1,000 years. She was also a witch, or had been, before her transformation. According to Lysander, she retained more of her human magic than most vampires did, making her a unique hybrid of supernatural abilities. She lived in the old district of the city, in a Gothic mansion that seemed to exist slightly out of phase with the modern world around it. Elara had met her only once, and the encounter had been unsettling. Morgana had looked at her with eyes that saw too much, that stripped away pretense and protection and peered directly into the soul beneath. Does she need to know? Elara asked, even though she already knew the answer. If anyone can tell us what's happening, it's her, Lysander said. And Elara. He stopped pacing and turned to face her fully. We need to know what this means. For you. For the child. For all of us. The unspoken words hung between them like smoke. We need to know if this is dangerous. Morgana's mansion loomed against the night sky like something out of a Gothic novel. Gargoyles perched on the corners of the roof, their stone eyes seeming to track Elara and Lysander as they approached up the long, winding drive. The house itself was a riot of architectural styles, as if different centuries had each contributed a wing or a tower without any regard for cohesion. Lysander's hand was cold even through Elara's glove. He hadn't spoken during the entire drive over, his jaw set in a hard line that spoke of worry and concentration. She wanted to reassure him, to tell him that everything would be fine, but the words felt hollow even in her own mind. The front door opened before they could knock, revealing a tall woman in a deep purple gown that seemed to shimmer between solid fabric and shadow. Morgana Nightshade looked no older than 30, with pale skin, dark hair that fell in waves to her waist, and eyes that were an unsettling shade of violet. Lysander, she said, her voice carrying an accent that belonged to no modern nation. And young Elara. I wondered when you would come to me. You knew. Lysander's voice was sharp with accusation. I suspected, Morgana corrected, stepping aside to let them enter. The blood moon was particularly potent this year. Strong enough that even I felt the pull of old magic, old possibilities. We have much to discuss. She led them through corridors lined with paintings and tapestries that depicted scenes from throughout history. Some beautiful, some disturbing. Elara tried not to look too closely at a particular tapestry that seemed to show a medieval battlefield, the bodies too realistic, the blood too red. They emerged into a circular room dominated by a large fireplace. Bookshelves lined every wall, packed with volumes that ranged from ancient leather-bound tomes to modern medical textbooks. A large table in the center of the room was covered with papers, maps, and what looked like alchemical equipment. Sit, Morgana commanded, gesturing to 2 chairs near the fire. She took a third chair across from them, her violet eyes fixing on Elara with an intensity that made her want to squirm. You carry life within you. Vampire life, mingled with human. I can sense it from here. How is this possible? Lysander leaned forward, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. Everything we know about our nature says this cannot happen. Everything we know, Morgana repeated softly. Tell me, Lysander, how old are you? 234 years. A child, then. I have lived for over a millennium, and in that time, I have learned that our understanding of what we are is incomplete. She rose and moved to one of the bookshelves, running her finger along the spines until she found what she was looking for. The book she pulled out was massive, bound in black leather with silver clasps. Before I was turned, I was a witch of considerable power, Morgana continued, returning to her seat with the book. I studied the old ways, the magic that predated modern understanding. And I learned something that most vampires never discover. Our condition is not merely biological. It is magical. And magic, unlike biology, can be flexible. She opened the book to a page marked with a strip of faded ribbon. The text was in a language Elara didn't recognize, but the illustrations were clear enough. A pregnant woman, her belly swollen, but with strange symbols drawn across her skin. Standing beside her was a figure that could only be a vampire, recognizable by the fangs and the way the artist had rendered its shadow. There are exactly 7 recorded cases of vampire-human pregnancies in all of history, Morgana said. 7 children born of a union between the living and the undead. The last was over 400 years ago. What happened to them? Elara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The children, I mean, and the mothers. Morgana's expression softened slightly, and for the first time, Elara saw something like sympathy in those ancient eyes. The outcomes varied. Of the 7 mothers, 4 survived the pregnancy and birth. 3 did not. The children. She paused, choosing her words carefully. They were unique. Neither fully human nor fully vampire, but something in between. Some lived normal human lifespans. Others lived for centuries. Some possessed abilities that neither of their parent species had. They were, in every sense, unprecedented. You're not filling me with confidence, Elara said dryly, even as her hand moved protectively to her stomach. I do not mean to frighten you, Morgana replied, only to prepare you. This pregnancy will not be like a normal human pregnancy. The child will be stronger, will develop differently. And you, Elara, will need to be carefully monitored. The child will require blood as well as conventional nutrients. Elara felt her stomach turn. Blood. Not much, initially. And it need not be human. Animal blood will suffice, particularly in the early stages. But yes, child, the being growing inside you is part vampire. It will need what vampires need. Lysander had gone completely still beside her. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. This is my fault. I should never have. On the blood moon, I felt different, more alive, and I thought. He stopped, turning to Elara with anguish written across his features. I'm so sorry. I've put you in danger. I've been selfish. Stop, Elara said firmly, reaching out to take his cold hand in hers. We were both there that night. We both made choices. I don't regret them, Lysander. I won't. How touching, Morgana murmured, though not unkindly. But sentiment will not protect you through what's coming. Lysander, your mate will need more than your love. She will need your blood. Lysander's head snapped up. Explain. The child is drawing on her life force, yes, but also on its vampiric nature. To properly develop, it will need to be exposed to vampire essence. Your blood, given to Elara in small, regular amounts, will strengthen both her and the child. It will also change her. Change her how? Lysander was on his feet now, his veneer of calm cracking. I will not turn her. I will not do that to her. Peace, young one. I do not speak of turning. But your blood will enhance her, make her stronger, help her body adapt to what it's carrying. Her senses will sharpen. Her strength will increase. She may even develop a limited form of the mental connection that vampires share. These changes will be temporary, most of them, though some may linger after the birth. Elara processed this information, trying to separate her fear from her rational mind. What are the risks? To me, specifically, Morgana regarded her with what might have been respect. You think clearly for one in your position. The primary risk is that your body cannot sustain the pregnancy. The child will draw more and more from you as it grows. With proper care, with vampire blood and careful monitoring, your chances of survival are good. Perhaps 70%. 70%, Elara repeated. 30% chance of death. Not terrible odds, but not comforting either. There are other risks as well, Morgana continued. The supernatural community is not fond of hybrids. There are those who would see this child as an abomination, a violation of natural law. You will need to be protected, both of you, throughout the pregnancy and after. I can protect them, Lysander said immediately. I will protect them. You are powerful, Lysander, but you are not invincible. And there are beings far older and more dangerous than you who might take an interest in a hybrid child. Morgana closed the ancient book with a soft thump. I will help you. For a price. Of course there was a price. Elara had read enough fairy tales to know that help from powerful magical beings never came free. What do you want? She asked before Lysander could speak. Morgana smiled, showing just the tips of her fangs. When the child is born, I wish to study it. Not invasively, not painfully. Simply to observe, to document, to understand. It has been 400 years since the last hybrid birth. The knowledge to be gained is invaluable. No, Lysander said flatly. I will not let you treat my child as a laboratory specimen. I am offering you protection, knowledge, and medical care throughout this pregnancy, Morgana replied, her voice hardening. In return, I ask only to observe and study. I will not harm the child. You have my word, and you know what that means among our kind. A vampire's word was binding, according to what Lysander had told Elara. They could not break an oath once given. It was one of the few ironclad rules that governed their society. We'll think about it, Elara said, squeezing Lysander's hand when he started to protest. But we need information now, regardless. What do we do? How do we keep me and the baby healthy? Morgana's expression softened again. Smart girl. Very well. I will provide you with what you need, and we will discuss my terms later. She rose and moved to the alchemical equipment on the table. You will need to begin taking Lysander's blood within the week. Start with small amounts, no more than a tablespoon every other day. As the pregnancy progresses, you will need more. I will provide you with supplements as well, special preparations that will help your body process the changes. She began gathering bottles and jars, mixing things with practiced efficiency. You will also need to modify your diet. More iron, more protein. Red meat, preferably rare. Your body will crave blood as well, though you will not need to consume it directly. Lysander's blood will suffice. How long? Elara asked. How long is the pregnancy? Shorter than a normal human pregnancy. Perhaps 6 months total, possibly 7. Hybrid children develop more quickly. Morgana handed her a small wooden box filled with vials and bottles. Instructions are included. Follow them precisely. And Elara? You must tell no one about this. No human doctors, no friends, no family. The fewer who know, the safer you will be. Elara nodded numbly, clutching the box to her chest. The reality of the situation was finally sinking in. She was pregnant with a hybrid child. She would need to drink her vampire boyfriend's blood to survive. There was a 30% chance she wouldn't make it through the pregnancy. And somewhere out there were supernatural beings who might want to harm or kill her unborn child. I know this is overwhelming, Morgana said quietly. But you are not alone. And despite what Lysander may think, I do wish you well. Hybrid children are precious, rare things. They represent possibility, the bridge between two worlds. Your child will be extraordinary. As they left the mansion, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed a threshold. There was no going back now. The life she had known, the person she had been, was already changing. The rain had stopped, and the city stretched out before them, full of lights and life and normalcy that seemed impossibly distant. Lysander helped her into the car, his touch gentle despite his obvious turmoil. When he got in beside her, he didn't start the engine. Instead, he turned to face her, his gray eyes searching hers. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "Because if you're not, if you have any doubts at all, we can— there are options." "I would never force you." "Stop," Elara interrupted. "I'm keeping this baby. Our baby. I'm terrified, yes. But I'm also— Lysander, I never thought I could have this with you. A future, a family. And now we do. I know it's dangerous. I know it's going to be difficult. But I want this. I want our child." Something in his expression cracked then, and for the first time since she'd shown him the pregnancy tests, she saw hope flicker in his eyes. "I love you," he whispered. "I have loved you since the moment I first saw you in that museum, standing in front of the Caravaggio, arguing with your colleague about the use of shadow and light. I have loved you every moment since. And I will love our child with the same intensity, the same devotion. I swear it." Elara kissed him, tasting the strange coolness of his lips, feeling the way he held himself back even now, always afraid of hurting her with his strength. "I love you too. We're going to get through this. Together." The next weeks passed in a blur of adjustments and discoveries. Elara had to quit her job at the museum. The nocturnal schedule was fine, but she needed to avoid scrutiny, and her changing body would eventually raise questions. Lysander supported them both, drawing on investments he had made over 2 centuries of existence. The first time she drank his blood, Elara nearly vomited. Lysander had cut his palm with a silver knife, one of the few materials that could actually wound him, and held it over a glass, letting the dark blood drip into it. It had looked nothing like human blood, thicker, with an almost opalescent sheen to it. "You don't have to do this," Lysander had said, even though they both knew she did. Elara had closed her eyes and drunk it quickly, trying not to taste it. But she had tasted it anyway. Copper and stone and something else, something ancient and powerful that seemed to resonate in her very bones. The effect had been immediate and shocking. Her fatigue had vanished, replaced by a surge of energy that left her almost giddy. Her senses had sharpened. She could hear the neighbors 3 doors down arguing, could smell the jasmine growing in the window box across the street, could see individual dust motes dancing in the lamplight. "Is this what the world is like for you?" she had asked Lysander, awed. "All the time." "Diluted," he had replied. "But yes. Welcome to my world, love." Over time, she grew accustomed to it. The blood, the heightened senses, the strange dreams that came when she slept, vivid, intense experiences that felt more like memories than fantasies. Sometimes she dreamed of Lysander's past, saw through his eyes as he walked through Paris during the Revolution, as he stood in a London ballroom during the Victorian era, as he survived the First World War in trenches that reeked of death. "Is it normal?" she asked Morgana during one of their weekly checkups. "The dreams." "You are developing the beginning of a blood bond," Morgana explained, her hands moving over Elara's stomach with professional detachment. "It is natural between vampires who share blood regularly. In your case, it is heightened by the pregnancy. The child serves as a conduit, allowing you to access Lysander's memories through his blood." The checkups revealed other changes as well. At 10 weeks, the baby was already the size it should have been at 16 weeks in a normal pregnancy. Morgana could hear its heartbeat, faster than a human's, with an irregular pattern that would have alarmed any human doctor but was apparently normal for a hybrid. "It's strong," Morgana said, and there was genuine pleasure in her voice. "Growing well. And you, Elara, are adapting better than I hoped. Your body is accepting the changes, working with the pregnancy rather than fighting it." But not everything was going smoothly. At 12 weeks, Elara experienced her first craving for fresh blood. She had been walking past a butcher shop when the smell had hit her. Raw meat, fresh kill, blood, and suddenly she had been ravenous in a way that went beyond normal hunger. She had stumbled into the shop, barely coherent, and bought a pound of liver. The butcher had looked at her strangely but had wrapped it up without comment. Elara had made it home and had torn into the package before she'd even fully closed the front door, eating the raw meat with her hands, barely chewing, just desperate to get it into her body. Lysander had found her like that, sitting on the kitchen floor, surrounded by bloody packaging, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what's happening to me," she had sobbed. "I'm becoming something else. Something not human." He had knelt beside her, pulling her into his arms despite the blood staining her clothes and hands. "You are human," he had said firmly. "You will always be human, Elara. This is temporary. The child is influencing you, changing you temporarily, but it's not permanent. After the birth, most of these effects will fade." "Most," Elara had repeated. "But not all." Morgana believes some changes may linger. Increased strength, perhaps. Sharper senses. A longer lifespan. He had pulled back to look at her. "Is that such a terrible thing? To be with me longer, to see our child grow up?" It wasn't terrible, Elara had to admit. The idea of having more time, of not being the fragile human who would age and die while Lysander remained forever young, it was appealing. But it was also frightening, the loss of certainty, the fundamental change to what she was. At 16 weeks, Elara felt the baby move for the first time. It wasn't the flutter that pregnancy books described. It was a strong, deliberate kick that actually made her gasp. Lysander had been there, his hand on her stomach, and his face had transformed with wonder. "I can feel it," he had breathed. "Our child. Alive. Moving." From that moment on, he had been even more protective. He accompanied her everywhere, hyper-aware of any potential threat. When a drunk man had stumbled too close to them on the street one night, Lysander had moved faster than Elara could track, putting himself between her and the man with a growl that was decidedly inhuman. "You need to be careful," she had scolded him later. "People will notice if you keep doing things like that." "Let them notice," he had replied, unrepentant. "Your safety is more important than maintaining a low profile." But his worry was not unfounded. At 18 weeks, they received their first real threat. Elara had been in the apartment alone. Lysander had gone to meet with some of his vampire contacts, trying to spread word of the pregnancy carefully, to ensure that his allies knew and his enemies didn't, when there had been a knock at the door. Through the peephole, she had seen a woman, perfectly ordinary in appearance. Middle-aged, professionally dressed, with a friendly smile. Elara had felt a twinge of unease but had opened the door anyway, keeping the chain on. "Can I help you?" "Elara Winters?" the woman had asked. "My name is Seraphine Graves. I represent a collection agency, you might say. We're very interested in your condition." The way she had said condition had sent chills down Elara's spine. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Seraphine's smile had widened, and Elara had caught a glimpse of fangs. "Word travels fast in our community. A hybrid child. Do you have any idea how valuable such a creature would be?" Elara had tried to slam the door, but Seraphine had been faster, shoving it open hard enough to snap the chain. She had moved with the fluid grace of a predator, crossing the threshold in a heartbeat. "Now, we can do this the easy way or the hard way," Seraphine had said. "You come with me quietly, carry the child to term under our supervision, and we'll make sure you're well compensated. Or—" She hadn't finished the sentence. Lysander had appeared in the doorway behind her, and the fury radiating from him had been palpable. Elara had never seen him truly angry before, had never witnessed what he was capable of when the careful mask of humanity was stripped away. What followed had been too fast for Elara to fully process. A blur of movement, sounds of impact, and then Seraphine had been on the floor, Lysander's hand around her throat, his eyes blazing silver. "You dare," he had snarled, his voice barely recognizable. "You dare to threaten what is mine?" "The council won't stand for this," Seraphine had choked out. "A hybrid is too dangerous. They'll send others. Stronger ones. You can't protect her forever. Watch me." Lysander had thrown her out, literally thrown her, with enough force that she had crashed into the wall across the hallway. By the time building security had arrived, she was gone. In the aftermath, Elara had been shaking so hard she could barely stand. Lysander had held her, murmuring apologies and reassurances, but for the first time, the reality of their situation had fully sunk in. There were people, creatures, who wanted their child, who saw it not as a baby, not as a person, but as a commodity or a threat to be eliminated. "We need to leave," Lysander had said. "This city isn't safe anymore. We need to go somewhere more isolated, somewhere I can better protect you." And so they had fled, abandoning the apartment and the life Elara had built there. Lysander had taken them to a remote house in the mountains, a property he had owned for decades but rarely visited. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way, surrounded by forest, with the nearest neighbor miles away. Morgana had come with them, setting up a makeshift medical station in one of the spare bedrooms. "The council is moving," she had explained grimly. "They see the child as a threat to the established order. There are factions who want it destroyed, others who want to control it. And yes, some who simply want to study it." She had looked at Elara meaningfully when she said this. "You want us to accept your offer," Elara had said. "The protection, the medical care, in exchange for you being able to observe the baby." "I want you to survive," Morgana had corrected. "And I want this child to have a chance at life. If that means offering my protection and resources, then so be it. My price remains the same. I wish to study and document. But Elara, Lysander, you should know that I am not the only ancient vampire who sees value in this child. The difference is that I see value in its life, its potential. Others see only what they can take from it." They had agreed, finally, because what choice did they have? Better Morgana's benevolent study than the alternatives. The mountain house became their world. Elara spent her days reading, resting, watching the seasons change through the large windows. Lysander hunted in the surrounding forests, bringing back deer blood for her to drink. She had grown to prefer it to his blood, finding it less potent, easier to stomach. The pregnancy progressed rapidly. At 20 weeks, Elara looked like she was 8 months pregnant by human standards. Her stomach was enormous, and she could feel the baby moving constantly now, strong kicks and rolls that sometimes took her breath away. Morgana monitored her closely, growing increasingly excited as the baby developed. "It has abilities already," she revealed during one examination. "I can sense them, even in the womb. Telekinesis, I think. Possibly telepathy as well. This child will be remarkable." Elara tried to focus on the positive, on the wonder of carrying this unique life. But she was also exhausted, in pain, and increasingly afraid. Her body was being pushed to its limits. There were days when she could barely get out of bed, when the baby seemed to drain every ounce of her strength. "I don't know if I can do this," she confessed to Lysander one night, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so tired. I hurt all the time. And I'm scared, Lysander. I'm so scared." He had held her, his cool body a comfort against her fevered skin. "You are the strongest person I have ever known," he had told her. "Human or vampire, mortal or immortal, I have never met anyone with your courage, your determination. You can do this, Elara. I know you can. And I will be with you every moment, every step. I swear it." At 24 weeks, Elara went into labor. It was too early, even by hybrid standards, and Morgana's face had been tight with worry as she examined her. "The child is ready," she had said. "But I'm not sure you are. This is going to be difficult, Elara. More difficult than a normal birth. The child is strong, and it will fight to come into this world. You will need to be stronger." The labor lasted 18 hours. 18 hours of pain unlike anything Elara had ever experienced. The baby wasn't just being born. It was tearing its way out, its supernatural strength wreaking havoc on her human body. There were moments when Elara was certain she would die, when the pain was so overwhelming that death seemed like a mercy. Lysander stayed with her throughout, holding her hand, letting her squeeze until his bones creaked, feeding her his blood when she grew too weak. And finally, as the sun began to rise outside the mountain house, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, their child was born. The baby's first cry was unlike anything a human infant should be capable of, loud, strong, almost defiant. Morgana wrapped the newborn quickly, checking reflexes, counting fingers and toes, examining with practiced efficiency. "A girl," she announced, and there was awe in her voice. "A healthy, strong girl." Lysander had tears on his face, actual tears, which Elara had never seen before. Vampires could not cry, not really, but somehow he had managed it. He had taken the baby from Morgana with trembling hands, staring down at the small face with an expression of utter devotion. "She's perfect," he had whispered. "Elara, she's absolutely perfect." The baby had opened her eyes then, and Elara had gasped. One eye was silver, like Lysander's. The other was green, like her own. Heterochromic eyes, one human, one vampire, a perfect visual representation of what she was, a bridge between two worlds. "What should we call her?" Lysander had asked, bringing the baby to Elara. Elara had looked at their daughter, at this impossible, precious miracle, and had known immediately. "Aurora," she had said, "because she was born with the dawn. Aurora Blackwood." "Aurora," Lysander had repeated softly. "Between two worlds. Belonging to both, limited by neither. Welcome to existence, little one." In the aftermath of the birth, Elara had nearly died. The trauma to her body had been severe, and for 3 days she had hovered between life and death. Morgana had worked tirelessly to save her, using a combination of modern medicine and ancient magic. Lysander had given her his blood, more than was safe, weakening himself in the process. But Elara had survived. She had fought, just as she had fought through the pregnancy, through the labor, through every impossible challenge this journey had thrown at her. And when she finally opened her eyes, weak but alive, the first thing she saw was Lysander holding their daughter, rocking her gently, singing to her in a language that had been dead for centuries. The recovery was slow. Morgana had been right about the lasting changes. Elara was stronger now, faster, her senses permanently heightened. She would age more slowly than a normal human, though she was not immortal. Morgana estimated she might live 200 or 300 years, a compromise between human mortality and vampire eternity. "You'll be able to watch her grow up," Lysander had said, relief evident in his voice. "Really grow up. Not just childhood but centuries of life. We'll have time, Elara. Real time together." But time was something they would have to fight for. Word of Aurora's birth had spread through the supernatural community like wildfire. The mountain house was besieged by visitors. Some curious, some threatening, all wanting to see the impossible child. Morgana had established protective wards around the property, ancient magic that would keep out the ill-intentioned. But she warned them that the wards would not hold forever. "The council will send someone eventually," she said. "Someone powerful enough to break through my protections. You need to be prepared for that." Aurora grew at an accelerated rate. At 1 month old, she looked like a 6-month-old human baby. She was preternaturally aware, her mismatched eyes tracking movement with an intelligence that was unsettling in one so young. She didn't cry often, but when she did, every glass in the house would shatter, every light would flicker. "Her powers are developing faster than expected," Morgana observed, taking careful notes in her leather journal. "Telekinesis. Definitely. Possibly some form of empathy as well. I've noticed she cries when either of you is distressed." Feeding Aurora was a challenge. She needed both regular food and blood. Lysander hunted fresh game for her, and Elara prepared it according to Morgana's instructions, a blend of nutrients that would support both sides of her nature. But it was the emotional toll that weighed on them most heavily. They were constantly on guard, constantly afraid. Every sound in the night might be a threat. Every stranger who appeared in the nearby town might be a scout for the council. 3 months after Aurora's birth, the council finally made their move. It was Morgana who sensed them first, her ancient magic detecting the breach in her wards. "They're here," she said, her violet eyes hardening. "Multiple vampires, old ones, and something else. Something I don't recognize." Lysander had immediately gone into protective mode, gathering Aurora and Elara, preparing to flee. But Morgana stopped him. "Running won't help," she said. They've found you once. They'll find you again. Better to face them here, on ground we've prepared, with protections in place. The visitors arrived at sunset. There were 5 of them, all ancient vampires that radiated power. Leading them was a man who introduced himself as Constantine Graves, old enough that he moved through the world like a force of nature, his very presence commanding attention. "We mean you no harm," he said, though his eyes, pitch black, without any hint of white, suggested otherwise. "The council merely wishes to assess the child, to determine if she poses a threat." "She's 3 months old," Elara said, holding Aurora tightly. "She's a baby. How could she possibly pose a threat?" "You would be surprised what beings of mixed heritage are capable of," another vampire spoke up, a woman with Asian features and hair that fell to the floor. "We have seen hybrids before, werewolf vampire, witch vampire, demon vampire. They are invariably unstable, dangerous. Many have had to be neutralized." Lysander's hands clenched into fists. "You will not touch my daughter." "That remains to be seen," Constantine replied calmly. "We wish merely to examine her, to test her abilities, to determine her nature. If she is stable, if she can be controlled, then there is no issue. If not—" He left the threat hanging. "No," Elara said firmly. "You're not taking her anywhere. You're not testing her like some laboratory animal. Then you leave us no choice." Constantine's expression hardened. "The council has authorized us to take the child by force if necessary, for the good of the supernatural community." What happened next happened fast. Lysander attacked first, moving with speed and fury. But he was badly outnumbered, and these were ancient vampires, each with centuries of fighting experience. They subdued him within seconds, pinning him to the ground. Morgana joined the fight, her magic crackling through the air, but even her considerable power was not enough against 5 opponents. She managed to take down one, leaving him unconscious on the floor, but the others overwhelmed her. Elara backed away, clutching Aurora, desperately looking for escape. But there was nowhere to go. The vampires surrounded her, closing in with predatory patience. And then Aurora began to cry. It wasn't a normal cry. It was a sound that seemed to bypass the ears and go straight to the brain, a psychic wail of distress and rage. Every vampire in the room stumbled, clutching their heads. The windows didn't just shatter, they exploded outward, sending glass flying in all directions. The house itself seemed to shake, foundations groaning, walls cracking. Objects flew through the air without being touched. Furniture, books, weapons, all orbiting around Elara and Aurora like a protective storm. "Impossible," Constantine gasped, blood trickling from his ears. "She's just a baby. This level of power shouldn't be possible." Aurora's eyes, both the silver and the green, had begun to glow. Elara could feel the power radiating from her daughter, raw and instinctive and terrifying. The baby didn't understand what she was doing, didn't have control, was simply reacting to the threat with every ounce of her hybrid nature. "Stop!" Elara shouted over the chaos. "Please, you're frightening her. She doesn't understand." But the vampires couldn't stop, couldn't move. They were frozen in place by Aurora's telekinetic grip, held as easily as dolls. Lysander, freed from their restraints, scrambled to his feet and rushed to Elara's side. "Aurora, it's okay," he said softly, putting his hand on the baby's head. "Shoo, little one. Papa's here. You're safe. You're safe." Slowly, gradually, the chaos subsided. The objects floating in the air clattered to the ground. The psychic pressure eased. Aurora's eyes stopped glowing, and she simply cried, normal baby tears now, exhausted and frightened. The vampires remained frozen for a moment longer, then collapsed as Aurora's hold on them released. They looked shaken, truly shaken, for perhaps the first time in centuries. Constantine pulled himself up slowly, staring at Aurora with a mixture of fear and awe. "That child," he said hoarsely, "is the most powerful being I have encountered in 800 years. And she doesn't even know what she's doing." "Which is precisely why you need to leave her alone," Morgana said, pulling herself to her feet with dignity despite her disheveled appearance. She needs time to grow, to learn control, to understand her abilities. Taking her from her parents now, subjecting her to tests and examinations, would only make her more dangerous. Or we could eliminate the threat before it becomes greater, the Asian vampire said, though her voice lacked conviction. Could you? Morgana challenged. You couldn't even get close to her when she was frightened. Imagine what she could do if she felt truly threatened. Imagine what Lysander and I would do to protect her. And ask yourself, is it worth the war this would start? Constantine considered this, his black eyes calculating. Finally, he nodded. Very well. We will leave the child in your care. For now. But Lysander Blackwood, Elara Winters, understand this. The council will be watching. If the child shows signs of instability, if she becomes a threat to humans or to our community, we will return. And next time, we will come prepared. They left as quickly as they had come, vanishing into the darkness. In the aftermath, the house was a wreck. Broken windows, cracked walls, furniture scattered everywhere. But they were alive. They were together. Elara held Aurora close, feeling her daughter's rapid heartbeat gradually slow to normal. It's okay, baby, she whispered. It's going to be okay. But would it be? They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Aurora's display of power had bought them time, but it had also confirmed the council's fears. Their daughter was powerful, more powerful than anyone had anticipated. We need to train her, Lysander said quietly. Teach her control before something like this happens again. She could have killed someone. She could have killed us. She's 3 months old, Elara protested. And she has the power of an ancient vampire combined with human adaptability and whatever unique abilities her hybrid nature grants, Morgana added. Lysander is right. Training should begin as soon as she's capable of understanding, which, given her rate of development, may be sooner than you think. The years that followed were unlike anything Elara could have imagined. Aurora grew rapidly, reaching the physical development of a 5-year-old by her first birthday. But her mental development was even more advanced. By 18 months, she was speaking in full sentences. By 2 years, she was reading books meant for teenagers. Training Aurora's abilities became the focus of their lives. Morgana worked with her on telekinesis, teaching her to move objects with precision rather than raw power. Lysander taught her about her vampire nature, the heightened senses, the strength, the need for blood. Elara taught her about humanity, empathy, morality, the value of life. It was a delicate balance. Aurora was neither fully human nor fully vampire, and she struggled with her dual nature. There were days when she craved blood so intensely that her eyes would glow silver. Other days, she would cry at the thought of hurting any living thing, even for food. Why am I like this? She asked one night, when she was physically about 7 years old but had only been alive for 3 years. Why can't I just be normal? Elara had held her daughter, stroking her dark hair, so like Lysander's. Because normal is overrated, she said gently. You're special, Aurora. You're unique. You have the best parts of both worlds. But I don't fit in either world, Aurora replied, her mismatched eyes filling with tears. Humans would be afraid of me if they knew what I was. And vampires think I'm an abomination. Where do I belong? With us, Lysander said firmly, joining them. You belong with us, with your family. And someday, you'll find others like you, or you'll create your own place in the world. But you will never be alone, Aurora. I promise you that. It was a promise they tried to keep, but it wasn't easy. Aurora's power continued to grow, and with it came increasing attention from the supernatural community. There were those who wanted to recruit her, to use her abilities for their own ends. Others who saw her as a threat to be eliminated. Still others who simply wanted to study her, to understand what she was. Morgana documented everything, filling journal after journal with observations and notes. She's developing new abilities, she reported when Aurora was 5 years old, physically about 12. I've observed minor precognition. She sometimes knows what's going to happen seconds before it does. And yesterday, I'm certain she influenced my thoughts, Made me want to give her an extra dessert. Mind control. Lysander looked alarmed. Very minor, and likely unconscious. But yes, telepathic influence seems to be part of her skill set now. Morgana smiled slightly. Your daughter is becoming quite formidable. Too formidable, perhaps. When Aurora was 7 years old, an incident occurred that changed everything. A group of human hunters, people who made it their mission to destroy supernatural creatures, had tracked them to the mountain house. They came armed with silver bullets, wooden stakes, holy water, every weapon their research told them would work against vampires. Aurora had been outside when they arrived, playing in the forest. She sensed the threat before anyone else did, felt the hatred and fear radiating from the hunters. And she reacted. By the time Elara and Lysander reached her, 3 hunters were dead, killed by Aurora's telekinetic power, necks snapped, bodies broken. The others had fled in terror. Aurora stood among the corpses, her eyes glowing, her hands shaking, looking simultaneously powerful and utterly lost. I didn't mean to, she whispered when Elara reached her. They were going to hurt you. I felt it. They wanted to kill Papa, to burn you alive, to destroy our home. I just wanted to stop them. I didn't mean to kill them. But she had killed them. 3 human lives, ended by a child who looked 12 but was only 7. The moral implications weighed on all of them, but especially on Aurora. They were going to hurt us, Lysander tried to reassure her. You were defending your family. That's not wrong. But I killed them, Aurora said, tears streaming down her face. I took their lives. Doesn't that make me a monster? Elara had no answer for that, because the truth was complicated. Aurora had killed in defense of her family, yes. But she had also killed with disturbing ease, with powers that made her incredibly dangerous. The line between protection and monstrosity was thinner than Elara wanted to admit. Morgana was more pragmatic. You need to learn discrimination, she told Aurora. Power without wisdom is dangerous. You have the ability to kill, yes. But you must develop the judgment to know when killing is necessary and when it is not. The incident with the hunters brought the council back. This time, they didn't come to threaten or test. They came with an offer. Constantine himself delivered it, meeting them on neutral ground in an abandoned church. Aurora Blackwood, he said, addressing her directly rather than her parents. You have proven yourself to be powerful beyond measure. The council believes that with proper guidance, you could be an asset rather than a threat. We wish to offer you training, a place among us. You mean you want to control her? Lysander growled. We mean to teach her, Constantine corrected. She has vampire blood, vampire abilities. She should learn from vampires how to use them responsibly. And in return, when she comes of age, she would serve the council as an enforcer, helping to maintain order in the supernatural community. Aurora looked at her parents, then back at Constantine. At 7 years old, physically 12, she already carried herself with a maturity beyond her years. And if I refuse? Then you remain a wild card. Unpredictable. Dangerous. The council would be uncomfortable with that situation. That sounds like a threat, Aurora observed. Constantine smiled, showing his fangs. It is merely a statement of fact. But consider this, young hybrid. If you work with us, you gain protection, training, and a purpose. If you remain isolated with your parents, you will always be hunted, always be feared. Which existence would you prefer? They asked for time to consider, and surprisingly, the council granted it. As they returned to the mountain house, the weight of the decision hung over them all. I don't want you to go, Elara said that night, holding Aurora close. I don't trust them. They see you as a weapon, not a person. But they're not wrong, Aurora replied quietly. I am dangerous. What I did to those hunters. Mama, I barely even thought about it. I just reacted, and they died. I need to learn control. I need to understand what I am. We can teach you that here, Lysander insisted. You don't need the council. Don't I? Aurora pulled away, her mismatched eyes meeting his. Papa, You're 200 years old. Morgana is 1,000. But neither of you are like me. Neither of you understand what it's like to be caught between two worlds, to have this much power at this age. Maybe the council can help. Maybe they can teach me what I need to know. Or maybe they'll corrupt you, Elara said softly. Use you for their own ends. Aurora, you're still so young. I'm young, but I'm not a child. Not really. I haven't been for a while now. Aurora's voice was sad but certain. I think I need to do this. For all of us. If I can learn control, if I can prove to the council that I'm stable, then maybe they'll leave us alone. Maybe we can finally have peace. It was Morgana who ultimately swayed them. The child is right, she said. She needs guidance beyond what we can provide. And practically speaking, having her aligned with the council is safer than having her in opposition to them. They could be powerful allies. Or powerful enemies, Lysander countered. They already are enemies, or at least they see Aurora as a threat. This way we change that dynamic. We turn a threat into an opportunity. And so, with heavy hearts, they agreed. Aurora would go to the council for training, but under specific conditions. She would maintain contact with her parents. She could leave if she felt unsafe or uncomfortable. And Morgana would serve as a liaison, checking on her regularly. The day Aurora left was one of the hardest of Elara's life. Her daughter, looking like a teenager but only 7 years old, stood at the door with a small bag of belongings, ready to step into a world her parents couldn't fully protect her from. I love you, Elara said, hugging her tightly. Always remember that. No matter what happens, no matter what they teach you or what you become, you are loved. You are our daughter. That will never change. I love you too, Mama, Aurora whispered. And Papa. And Morgana. You gave me life, you protected me, you taught me what it means to be both human and vampire. I won't forget that. Lysander held her for a long moment. His face pressed against her hair. Be careful, he said roughly. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, leave. Come home. We'll face whatever consequences together. Aurora nodded, then stepped back, squaring her shoulders. In that moment, she looked so much older than her 7 years, so much more powerful. She was no longer just their daughter. She was Aurora Blackwood, the hybrid, the bridge between worlds, a being of unprecedented power stepping into her destiny. As she walked away, toward the black car where Constantine waited, Elara felt tears streaming down her face. Lysander held her, and together they watched their daughter leave. We did the right thing, Lysander said, though he didn't sound convinced. Didn't we? I don't know, Elara replied honestly. I really don't know. 5 years passed. Aurora thrived under the council's tutelage, learning to control her powers with precision and discipline. She grew into a young woman, physically 18, actually 12, who commanded respect from even the oldest vampires. Her abilities had expanded beyond anyone's expectations. Telekinesis, telepathy, precognition, empathy, and something new. The ability to manipulate energy itself, to create shields and weapons from pure will. She visited her parents regularly, and in those visits, Elara saw both the daughter she loved and something new. A warrior, a leader, someone being shaped by forces beyond their family. The council wants to send me on missions, Aurora told them during one visit. Stopping rogue vampires, dealing with supernatural threats, maintaining the balance between our world and the human world. They say I'm ready. Are you ready? Elara asked. Aurora smiled, that beautiful smile that could light up a room. I don't know. But I'm going to find out. And she did. Aurora Blackwood became a legend in the supernatural community. The hybrid who could face down ancient vampires, who could stop werewolf packs with a thought, who could sense threats before they materialized. She was feared, respected, and above all, she was free. Free to exist between two worlds. Free to be neither fully human nor fully vampire, but something new, something unprecedented. One day, when she was 15 years old, physically 21, Aurora returned to the mountain house with news. I've found others, she said, her eyes bright with excitement. Other hybrids. Not vampire-human, but other combinations. Werewolf-witch, demon-human, fae-vampire. We're not alone, any of us. We're forming a community, a place where people like us can belong. Elara felt her heart swell with pride and relief. Her daughter had found her place in the world. Not with the humans, not with the vampires, but with others like herself. Others caught between worlds. I want you to see it, Aurora continued. Both of you. And Morgana too. The sanctuary we're building. It's going to be a place where hybrids can live safely, can learn to control their powers, can just exist without being hunted or feared. As they traveled to see this new sanctuary, a sprawling complex hidden by magic and technology, Elara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that moment in her bathroom, staring at a positive pregnancy test that shouldn't have been possible, to now, watching her daughter build a new world. Do you regret it? Lysander asked quietly as they watched Aurora lead a group of young hybrids through a training exercise. Everything we went through. The danger, the fear, the uncertainty. Elara looked at him, at this centuries-old vampire who had learned to love, to hope, to be a father. Then she looked at Aurora, powerful and beautiful and happy, teaching others like herself. Not for a second, she replied. We created something impossible. Something beautiful. A bridge between two worlds. And now she's helping others cross that bridge. Lysander smiled, that rare, genuine smile that made him look almost human. Between two worlds, he repeated. Belonging to both, limited by neither. Exactly, Elara said, taking his hand. Exactly. And as the sun set on another day, casting the sanctuary in shades of amber and gold, they watched their daughter, their impossible, precious daughter, help build a future where being caught between worlds was not a curse but a gift. Where the impossible could not only exist but could thrive. Aurora glanced back at them and waved, her mismatched eyes shining with love and purpose. And in that moment, Elara knew that every struggle, every fear, every sacrifice had been worth it. They had created something new. Something that would change both worlds forever. And it all began with one impossible pregnancy, one impossible love, and one impossible choice to believe that sometimes the most beautiful things are the ones that should never have existed at all.